There's a particular kind of silence that cuts deeper than words. The silence that follows when someone looks at you as if you don't matter. It might happen in a meeting, in a relationship, or in the eyes of a stranger who dismisses you before you even speak. That moment, that cold dismissal, it burns. But here's the truth most people never realize. The way others treat you is a reflection of their own chaos, not your worth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When another blames you or hates you, or people voice similar criticisms, go to their souls. Penetrate inside and see what sort of people they are. You will realize there is no need to be racked with anxiety that they hold any particular opinion about you." He wasn't writing from comfort. He was writing while carrying an empire on his shoulders, surrounded by betrayal, flattery, and disrespect. And yet, he found peace. The world hasn't changed much. Disrespect still stings. But the Stoics discovered something extraordinary. No one can truly disrespect you unless you give them permission to define you. That's the invisible battlefield most people never see, the quiet war between external judgment and internal dignity. The Stoic stands not by fighting the noise, but by mastering the silence within it. You may think that strength means confronting every insult, proving every critic wrong, or demanding the respect you deserve. But Stoicism whispers a harder truth. You don't earn respect by chasing it. You earn it by becoming someone who doesn't need it. It's a paradox most people never escape. We spend years trying to be seen, trying to be validated, trying to be understood, until one day someone disrespects us so deeply that it wakes us up. Seneca once said, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality." The pain of disrespect isn't just in what they said or did, it's in what we imagine it means about us. But that's the illusion the Stoic learns to see through, because when you realize that your worth was never theirs to measure, something changes. You stop reacting and start commanding your own presence. Still, here's the part they don't tell you. Remaining calm in the face of disrespect isn't weakness, it's mastery. It's the kind of quiet power that terrifies small minds. Epictetus, born a slave and mocked for his limp, once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." That truth is the seed of every Stoic strength. You can't control the actions of those who belittle you, but you can control whether you let them make you small. In a world obsessed with proving worth, Stoicism gives you something rarer: the ability to walk away untouched, unshaken, unbent. But before you can master that silence, you have to understand why disrespect cuts so deep and how the Stoics turned that wound into wisdom. Because hidden inside every insult, every slight, every moment of being overlooked is a mirror reflecting who you are when no one else sees your value. This is where the transformation begins. This is where we rediscover the ancient power that no modern insult can touch.
Disrespect doesn't just hurt because someone said something cruel. It hurts because somewhere deep inside, a part of us agrees with them or fears that they might be right. That's the hidden weight of disrespect. It echoes in the chambers of self-doubt, stirring memories of times we were ignored, undervalued, or forgotten. It's not just the stranger's rudeness, the colleague's condescension, or the friend's silence. It's the story we tell ourselves afterward. Maybe I am not enough. That's where the real wound lives. And that's exactly the battlefield the Stoics prepared us for, not the world outside, but the war within. Marcus Aurelius faced this war daily. Imagine the emperor of Rome, surrounded by senators who plotted behind his back, generals who envied him, citizens who whispered that he was too philosophical, too detached. Yet in meditations, he never once demanded respect. Instead, he wrote reminders to himself. Don't waste the rest of your time here worrying about other people, unless it affects the common good. It will keep you from doing anything useful. Marcus understood what so few today realize. Respect is not a currency you demand. It's a byproduct of the peace you carry. When others tried to drag him into petty games of pride, he stayed still, not out of weakness, but out of power. Seneca warned about this same illusion. In a letter to Lucilius, he wrote, "No man can be despised by another unless he first despises himself." The Stoic knows that disrespect is a test, not of the world's cruelty, but of one's inner stability. When someone tries to belittle you, they're revealing their own disorder, not yours. Yet most of us fail this test. We react, we argue, we chase the validation of those who never intended to give it. And each time we do, we trade a piece of our freedom for the illusion of acceptance. Epictetus once said, "If someone speaks ill of you, defend yourself only if it is just. Otherwise, let them think what they will." That's not passivity, that's precision. The Stoic doesn't fight every battle. They choose which wars are worth their peace. Modern psychology echoes this truth. Neuroscientists say that social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex lights up like a wound. That's why it feels unbearable. But what Marcus and Seneca grasped centuries ago is that pain without awareness becomes suffering. Pain with awareness becomes power. They trained their minds to observe disrespect without attaching identity to it. They practiced turning the wound into wisdom, the sting into strength. And in that, they discovered the rarest form of respect, self-respect, born from restraint. Still, there's something haunting about being misunderstood, isn't there? We live in an age where everyone demands to be heard, yet no one truly listens. So when someone disrespects you, your instinct screams to react, to explain, to prove, to shout louder. But the Stoic pauses. They breathe. They remember that silence, when chosen, can be louder than any response. Because sometimes, the most terrifying thing you can do to those who disrespect you is not to fight back, but to stay calm while they lose control. Marcus called this the dignity of restraint. It's the quiet revolution of the Stoic mind. And yet, there's still a question lingering beneath it all. How do you actually do that? How do you stay composed when someone mocks your value, betrays your trust, or speaks your name with venom? Philosophy sounds noble until your dignity is on the line. The Stoics had a method, not just theory, for reclaiming respect without demanding it. Their tactics were practical, deliberate, and brutally honest. But before we can learn those, we must first confront the truth about ourselves, that our reaction to disrespect reveals what we value most. And if we can master that, if we can learn to rule that inner reaction, then no one on earth can truly rule us again.
Every person who's ever walked the path of mastery has faced the sting of disrespect, but few have faced it like the Stoics did. Picture this: Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, surrounded by marble halls and men who bowed before him, yet behind closed doors they mocked his gentleness, whispered that he was too soft, too philosophical to rule. They thought restraint was weakness, and yet Marcus never answered them with rage or punishment. Instead, he wrote in his private journal, not for the world, not for legacy, but for himself, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." He turned insult into introspection, betrayal into meditation. That's not detachment, that's power of the highest order. Because when you learn to control your response, you control the battlefield. Seneca, too, knew the taste of humiliation. Once he was publicly accused of greed, mocked in the Senate for his wealth, and eventually exiled by Emperor Claudius. Imagine one of the greatest minds in history, stripped of title and home, slandered by the very people he served. But instead of bitterness, Seneca turned his isolation into insight. In exile, he wrote letters that still outlive his enemies, words that speak to every wounded soul today. "It is not that we have a short time to live," he wrote, "but that we waste much of it." The disrespect he endured became the forge that shaped his endurance. He realized that no insult can truly harm a man who no longer measures his worth by another's opinion. And then there was Epictetus, a man born a slave, beaten, ridiculed, and dismissed as lesser by everyone around him. One day his master twisted his leg cruelly during an outburst of anger. Epictetus, calm even in agony, said softly, "If you continue, you will break it." The master continued, and it broke. Epictetus looked at him and said, "Did I not tell you?" That single moment became one of the greatest demonstrations of Stoic strength ever recorded. He didn't curse, he didn't plead, he didn't rage. He simply observed the reality of the moment and remained unmoved. Later he would teach his students, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself can fetter my will." It's one of the most chilling expressions of freedom ever uttered, because it wasn't metaphorical, it was lived. These men weren't saints. They felt anger, humiliation, and sorrow, just like you do. But they refused to let those emotions dictate their dignity. They discovered a secret that most of us forget. Disrespect is a mirror, not a verdict. When someone tries to devalue you, they are only revealing the limits of their own understanding. The Stoic doesn't deny the pain of disrespect. They face it, dissect it, and strip it of its power. What's left is a clean kind of strength, not the kind that shouts, but the kind that doesn't need to. In our modern world, that kind of composure feels almost alien. We live in an age of outrage, where everyone must respond, must prove, must react instantly. But Marcus would tell you, be tolerant with others and strict with yourself. The greatest insult to those who disrespect you isn't your words, it's your unwavering calm. Because when someone cannot provoke you, they lose their power over you. And that is when respect, real respect, begins to shift. Not because you demanded it, but because you transcended the need for it. But how does one reach that level of mastery in a world designed to provoke you? That's where the Stoic path begins to reveal itself, not in theory, but in discipline. The Stoics developed practical methods, mental shifts, and daily practices that turned emotional chaos into composure. Their approach was not emotional suppression, it was transformation. And over the next few moments, we'll uncover those 5 timeless tactics, one by one, the same ones Marcus, Seneca, and Epictetus used to turn disrespect into dominance. But first, we must understand the inner mechanics of control. What happens inside the Stoic mind the moment someone disrespects them?
When someone disrespects you, the first reaction is rarely noble. It's raw, fast, and automatic. The rush of heat in your chest, the quick tightening of your jaw, the inner voice screaming, "How dare they?" That is the moment where almost everyone loses the war. Because the instant you react, you surrender control. But the Stoic understood something crucial about that flash of emotion. It's not the insult that hurts you. It's your interpretation of it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now." The Stoic response begins before the first word leaves their mouth. in the mind's quiet decision to remain sovereign. Seneca once compared emotional control to steering a ship in stormy seas. The waves, the insults, the gossip, the disrespect are inevitable, but the captain still holds the rudder. Most people, he said, let the storm decide where they go. The Stoic, however, remembers that the storm is not personal. The words of others are just weather passing through. Epictetus taught his students to mentally reframe insults in real time. When someone mocked him, he would say, "They are not insulting me, only their idea of me, and that idea is theirs to keep." This practice, though simple, is profound, because once you stop taking disrespect personally, you stop being its prisoner. Modern psychology agrees. Cognitive behavioral therapy, one of today's most effective therapeutic models, is rooted in Stoic philosophy. Its founder, Albert Ellis, openly credited Epictetus' teaching. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Neuroscience shows that within milliseconds of feeling insulted, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, floods your body with emotion. But if you can delay your reaction even by a few seconds, the prefrontal cortex, your rational brain, reactivates. That's where Stoicism lives, in that sacred gap between stimulus and response. The moment you buy time, you buy back your freedom. Marcus trained himself to expand that gap every day. He called it returning to the citadel of the mind, an inner fortress untouched by insult. When people lied about him or questioned his worth, he imagined their motives as sicknesses of the soul, not attacks on his essence. They do wrong through ignorance. Teach them or bear with them. That's the heart of Stoic detachment, not arrogance, but understanding. Because when you realize that others act out of confusion, ego, or pain, you stop expecting clarity from chaos. Their disrespect becomes a mirror of their suffering, not a measure of your value. But here's what makes this so difficult for us today. We live in an age where reaction is currency. Outrage gets attention. Silence feels like defeat. Every comment, every look, every post becomes a test of ego. The Stoics would look at this world and smile sadly because they knew how fragile it makes us. They would say, "You have built your peace on the opinions of others. No wonder it trembles." The Stoic builds differently. They build on truth, on what they can control, their perception, their choices, their inner dialogue. When someone disrespects them, they don't shrink or explode. They observe, they breathe, they let the wave pass, because they understand something profound. To control your reaction is to control your reality. And yet, knowing this isn't enough. Knowing that you shouldn't react doesn't stop the emotional pain when disrespect lands. The Stoics knew that too, and they developed disciplines to train the mind and body to feel the sting without letting it cut. This is where the transformation begins. Before we reveal the 5 Stoic tactics, we must explore how they trained their emotional armor, how they rewired the connection between insult and identity, and how you can begin doing the same. Because if you can master the moment you're disrespected, everything that comes after bends to your will.
No one wakes up calm. Calm is forged. The Stoics treated it not as a personality trait, but as a discipline that could be trained like muscle. Every insult, every slight, every failure of respect was a form of resistance, pressure meant to strengthen the will. Seneca told Lucilius, "Fire tests gold, misfortune tests brave men." What he meant was that disrespect is the weight that reveals what you're made of. To the untrained mind, it feels like an attack. To the Stoic, it's practice. Each morning, Marcus Aurelius rehearsed what he called the premeditation of adversity. He would remind himself, today you will meet ungrateful, arrogant, deceitful, envious, uncharitable men. Imagine starting your day expecting disrespect rather than fearing it. By rehearsing insult in advance, he robbed it of surprise, so when it came, he recognized it as familiar. Modern psychology now calls this exposure therapy, controlled contact with discomfort until it loses its sting. Marcus was doing it 2,000 years before the term existed. Epictetus trained the same way, though his classroom was harsher. His students learned to treat every moment of irritation as a chance to practice control. If someone spilled wine on them, they were to pause before reacting and whisper internally, "You have met with the expected." It wasn't resignation, it was mastery through rehearsal. He told them, "When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger." The goal wasn't to suppress emotion, but to widen awareness until anger couldn't fill the whole mind. The Stoics also trained the body. They practiced voluntary discomfort, bathing in cold water, walking in thin clothing, fasting, sleeping on the floor, not to suffer needlessly, but to teach the body that peace is not dependent on comfort. Seneca advised, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, so that you may be prepared for the worst." The logic is brilliant. If you can endure chosen hardship, unchosen hardship loses its terror. Disrespect, then, becomes merely another cold wind brushing against a soul already weathered by training. Modern neuroscience confirms their insight. Each time you face a stressor without reacting, you rewire neural pathways. The amygdala quiets. The prefrontal cortex strengthens. Discipline literally reshapes the brain. What the Stoics called prohairesis, the power of choice, modern science calls neuroplasticity. The language differs, but the truth is the same. Repeated calm becomes natural calm. This is why the Stoic doesn't flinch when disrespected. They have rehearsed the scene 1,000 times in silence. They have already met the insult in imagination, already forgiven the fool in advance, already practiced the breath that steadies the pulse. When the real moment arrives, it feels almost gentle, an echo rather than an explosion.
Epictetus told his students that philosophy begins with one simple exercise. Appearances are of two kinds, those that depend on us and those that do not. Every insult, every flash of disrespect arrives first as an appearance. It feels personal. It feels like truth. But the Stoic pauses before believing it. He asks, is this event in my control or outside it? Is it a fact or only a judgment? That single question separates the free from the enslaved. Because most of us live imprisoned by appearances, reacting to every tone of voice, every raised eyebrow, as though the universe itself had spoken against us. The Stoic, by contrast, treats each perception as a suspect until proven true. Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline relentlessly. When an advisor lied to him, he didn't rush to anger. He observed the event like a scientist. A man has spoken falsely. That is the fact. The rest, that he insulted me, that I have been wronged, is judgment. I can choose to withdraw it. Imagine how disarming that is. The emperor of the most powerful empire in history refusing to add emotional commentary to a fact. The insult shrinks to its real size, just air, just sound. The respect he loses from others he regains 100-fold within. Seneca described this inner detachment as philosophical eyesight. He wrote, "Things do not touch the soul. Our disturbances come only from within, from our opinion of things. It's the difference between standing in a storm and watching one from shelter. The same rain falls, but your position changes everything. The Stoic trains to stay in that shelter, an internal distance where clarity lives." Modern psychology calls this cognitive reappraisal, the ability to reframe an insult, he must be having a bad day, before emotion takes full hold. MRI studies show that when people reframe an insult, the limbic system quiets and the prefrontal cortex regains control. The ancients called it reason governing passion. 2,000 years later, neuroscience simply confirms what the Stoics practiced daily. Perception is power. But the discipline of perception is not cold indifference. It's compassionate clarity. Marcus reminded himself to see even his enemies as parts of the same human body. "We were born for cooperation," he wrote, "as the hands or the feet." When someone disrespects you, he would say, remember that they act from ignorance, not malice, from confusion, not clarity. To see them in this way is not weakness, it's vision. You stop being dragged into their blindness. You remain the observer, not the observed. And that is the beginning of freedom. Seeing things as they are, not as your ego paints them. Because once you master how you see, you master what you feel. The world still throws the same insults, but they fall on armor woven from understanding. This vision, the discipline of perception, is the ground upon which every Stoic tactic stands. Without it, all the advice in the world collapses under the first sign of disrespect. With it, every word against you becomes a lesson, every slight a spark for greater clarity. Still, perception alone is not the whole path. The Stoics taught that after seeing rightly, one must act rightly. Vision must harden into habit, insight into presence. For when you face disrespect in real time, when voices rise, eyes roll, or someone tries to make you small, clarity must move through the body as deliberate motion. In the next breath, Stoicism becomes action. And from that action, the first of the 5 tactics begins to emerge.
There's a silence that comes before mastery. Not the silence of fear, but of control. The Stoics called it euthymia, a steady mind, untouched by the chaos of others. Seneca defined it as believing in yourself and trusting that you are on the right path without the need to compare or compete. It is this silence that makes a Stoic untouchable, even when surrounded by disrespect. Imagine Epictetus, born a slave, mocked by his master, physically beaten, yet never losing his composure. One day, his master twisted his leg in anger. Epictetus warned, "If you continue, you will break it." The man did. And Epictetus, without shouting, simply said, "Did I not tell you that it would break?" No hatred, no revenge, only observation and acceptance of what is. The Stoics were not emotionless. They were powerful, beyond reaction. They understood that losing one's temper is like handing your sword to your enemy. Marcus Aurelius faced similar moments: betrayal, slander, endless criticism from generals and senators who smiled to his face but whispered behind closed doors. And yet, he wrote to himself, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." He knew that matching the energy of the disrespectful only multiplies their chaos. Restraint is not weakness. It's a declaration of dominance over one's own nature. Seneca echoed this when he said, "No one can insult you without your consent." And isn't that the truth of modern life? A coworker dismisses you. A friend interrupts. Someone online throws words like knives, and your instinct is to fight, to defend, to prove your worth. But the moment you react from ego, you step onto their battlefield. You fight a war they control. The Stoic instead pauses. They turn the moment into a mirror, not to reflect the insult, but to observe their own soul. In those few seconds of stillness, something extraordinary happens. The world slows. You feel the surge of anger rise, but it passes through, not into you. This is the training ground of all self-mastery. Marcus called it the moment between impulse and action, the sacred gap where freedom lives.
To hold that gap, to choose not to react, is to reclaim your life from every manipulator who ever tried to pull your strings. Modern neuroscience now maps what Marcus and Seneca felt intuitively. The amygdala fires when we perceive disrespect, flooding the body with cortisol and adrenaline. But the prefrontal cortex, the rational mind, can override it with awareness and breath. This is not mysticism, it's biology meeting philosophy. Every calm breath is an act of rebellion against emotional slavery. So, when the Stoic stands before disrespect, they do not suppress emotion, they transmute it. They convert the heat of anger into the light of clarity. They move from reaction to response, from instinct to intention. This is the quiet strength that terrifies those who thrive on control. Because nothing unnerves the disrespectful more than the person who refuses to be moved. And that's where the story turns. From this point on, philosophy becomes action, the kind of wisdom you can see. We've seen the Stoic's mind, now we'll see his movement. The next moment marks the beginning of revelation, the unveiling of the first tactic drawn from this silence, this stillness before the sword is raised.
When a man once insulted Zeno of Citium, the founder of Stoicism, in the marketplace, the crowd waited for the philosopher's reply. But Zeno said nothing. He simply looked at the man, calm, unwavering, and still. Minutes passed. The man's mockery turned into unease, unease into shame. The silence was heavier than any insult could be. That was Zeno's lesson. Presence is power. And this is the first Stoic tactic. Command respect through silent presence. Most people think respect comes from words, clever comebacks, sharp defenses, or proving one's worth. But the Stoics knew that true respect is not taken from others. It is felt by them in your demeanor. Epictetus wrote, "Show them by your life, not by your arguments, that philosophy has made you calm." When you walk into a room, your energy either demands attention or dissipates into noise. And the difference lies not in arrogance, but in inner stillness. Because stillness carries gravity. It says, "I am not fighting for my value. I already know it." Marcus Aurelius modeled this when he entered the Senate after crushing criticism from the elite who called him too lenient, too philosophical, too detached. He didn't shout. He didn't defend himself. He simply walked in, spoke calmly, made his decisions, and left. Within months, even his rivals began to defer to him, not out of fear, but out of an unexplainable recognition that he was unshakable. That's the paradox. The less you beg for respect, the more it finds you. In the modern world, silent presence has almost disappeared. We live in a culture that glorifies noise, constant reaction, endless defense, public outrage. But silence, when rooted in self-respect, cuts through that chaos like a blade. It unsettles manipulators, confuses the arrogant, and earns quiet admiration from the wise. As Seneca said, "He who is brave is free." Freedom from the need to explain yourself, that's what others instinctively recognize as strength. When someone disrespects you, try this experiment. Don't rush to argue or correct them. Simply pause. Hold their gaze with calm, not anger. Let the silence stretch until they start to feel its weight. Because silence in the hands of a master becomes a mirror. It reflects their own insecurity back to them. And while they wrestle with that discomfort, you remain immovable, serene, centered, and sovereign. This is not passive aggression. It's assertive stillness, a weapon forged from awareness. Marcus reminded himself, "Be like the cliff against which the waves break, but it stands firm and tames the fury of the water around it."
That's what silent presence looks like in human form. Every insult that hits you dissolves against your composure. Every attempt to provoke you exposes the other person's weakness, not yours. Psychologists today describe this as dominant calm, the kind of body language and tone that signals both control and confidence. Slower movements, steady voice, unbroken eye contact. You speak little, but every word lands with weight. People may not understand why they respect you, but they feel it, viscerally. Because calm energy is ancient, it's the language of nature itself. To command respect through silent presence is to live like a mountain among clouds, unmoved, unbothered, and eternal. This was the first Stoic victory, mastery over self before mastery over others. And once you learn this, disrespect no longer wounds you. It reveals who lacks discipline around you. From that clarity, you move toward the next stage, when silence turns into measured speech, when calm becomes strategic action. That is the next frontier of Stoic power.
Words have built empires and destroyed them. They can heal wounds or carve new ones. But the Stoics understood a truth that most people never learn. Speech reveals your discipline more than your actions do. Epictetus warned his students, "Let silence be your general rule," or say only what is necessary and in few words. To the Stoic, language was sacred, not for its ornament, but for its restraint. And nowhere is that restraint more powerful than when facing disrespect. Seneca once said, "Anger is like a ruin. It breaks itself upon what it falls." He meant that in every heated exchange, the one who loses composure loses credibility. Think about the last time someone disrespected you. Maybe they mocked your ideas, spoke over you, or questioned your worth. The immediate impulse is defense, to explain, to argue, to correct. But the Stoic sees the trap. Because the moment you justify yourself to someone who disrespects you, you're accepting their frame. You're proving that their opinion matters more than your peace. Marcus Aurelius faced this countless times in the Roman court. As emperor, every senator, general, and orator tried to outspeak him. Yet he mastered the power of few words. When accused of indecision by one of his critics, he replied only, "If the gods will it so, I will be as slow as they make me." No explanation, no irritation, just calm defiance wrapped in humility. And in that restraint lay immense authority. Because the fewer words a wise man uses, the more meaning each one carries. This is the paradox of respect. The more you chase it through speech, the further it runs. People rarely remember everything you say, but they never forget how they felt in your silence between words. The Stoics treated speech as a weapon that should only be unsheathed when precision demanded it. Seneca advised, "Better to trip with the feet than with the tongue." In modern terms, that means if emotion rules your mouth, silence becomes your strength. In our age of social media, where everyone has an opinion and few have perspective, the Stoic art of controlled speech is revolutionary. When others raise their voices, lower yours. When they rush to interrupt, slow down. When they attack, respond not with defense, but with depth. You'll see how quickly noise collapses before quiet confidence. Because people don't respect the loud, they respect the deliberate. Modern neuroscience again affirms what the ancients intuited. When we speak less and breathe slower during confrontation,
Our nervous system regulates itself. Heart rate drops, clarity rises, and the brain's decision-making circuits activate. This physiological calm translates into social dominance. It signals that you are not threatened. And in any hierarchy, workplace, family, friendship, the one least threatened always holds the power. So practice the Stoic pause before you speak. Ask yourself, as Epictetus taught, is what I am about to say true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If not, let silence speak for you. And when you do choose to speak, make it count. Speak with precision, not volume. With truth, not impulse. With poise, not pride. The disrespectful thrive on reaction. They seek chaos because it equalizes them. They can't rise to your level, so they try to pull you to theirs. But when you speak like a Stoic, sparse, calm, deliberate, you destroy that bridge. They cannot fight someone who refuses to swing. They cannot dominate someone who doesn't need to prove. Your silence unsettles them. Your restraint exposes them. And your measured words remind them of what they lost: control. Because in the end, the one who governs his tongue governs the battlefield. That's why Marcus wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Speech is not about performance. It's about embodiment. And from that embodiment, we now turn to the third Stoic weapon, not silence, not speech, but something deeper: the art of emotional distance.
There is a storm inside every insult, a rush of anger, indignation, and wounded pride. Most people react instantly, allowing that storm to dictate words, actions, and even the direction of their lives. The Stoics, however, mastered the rare art of detachment. Epictetus reminded his students, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Disrespect is unavoidable. Your response is optional. And that choice, calm, deliberate, rational, becomes your strongest weapon. Marcus Aurelius faced countless attempts to provoke him. Senators undermining him, generals questioning his authority, crowds whispering insults as he walked through Rome. And yet, he never allowed emotion to dictate action. He would pause, observe, and analyze. What is fact? What is opinion? What can I control? By separating the stimulus from the story you tell yourself about it, he converted potential chaos into clarity. Insults became data, not wounds. The human tendency is to feel attacked, but the Stoic asks, what does this reveal about the other person, about the world, and about myself? Seneca taught that all disrespect has two layers: the external event and your internal judgment. The first is inevitable. The second is a choice. If someone speaks rudely, you cannot control their words, but you can control the narrative in your mind. Do you let their criticism burn you, or do you extract the truth, discard the noise, and act with wisdom? To detach emotionally is not to ignore injustice. It is to prevent it from infecting your inner life. The Stoic mind becomes a fortress. You choose what enters, and everything else falls away. Modern psychology calls this cognitive distancing or emotional regulation. When you separate fact from interpretation, you reduce the intensity of negative emotions. Neuroscience shows that this activates the prefrontal cortex, the seat of reason, over the amygdala, the seat of instinctive reaction. The Stoics were proto-neuroscientists. They knew that your inner narrative determines your power in the outer world. Imagine someone humiliates you publicly. Most people react with shame or retaliation. The Stoic, however, sees the act clearly. This is a reflection of their ignorance, not my worth. This is temporary. This is not me. By removing personal attachment, the insult becomes neutral. And once neutral, you can act strategically. Respond only if it serves purpose. Ignore if it doesn't. Or use measured speech to expose truth without ego. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If someone is able to show me that what I think or do is wrong, I will gladly change, for I seek truth, by which no one was ever truly harmed." The insult becomes opportunity. The provocation becomes lesson. Your energy is no longer wasted on outrage. Instead, it flows into action, insight, and growth. This is the third Stoic tactic. Detach emotionally, respond logically. It's the art of transforming potential pain into clarity and potential conflict into advantage. When you master this, you no longer live as a reactive creature, but as a deliberate force. The disrespectful lose influence. The manipulative fail to provoke. And the chaotic world begins to feel predictable. And yet, detachment alone isn't the end. It's a shield, not a weapon. The next step is combining that shield with assertive boundaries, the fourth tactic, so that others can no longer encroach on your peace without consequence. But before we reveal that, you must understand one key principle. Freedom isn't granted by others. It is claimed from within.
Disrespect thrives where boundaries are weak. Most people unconsciously hand over their space, their time, their dignity, hoping for approval, fearing conflict. The Stoics understood that inner calm alone is not enough. Without firm boundaries, even the most disciplined mind can be dragged into chaos. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But he also knew that knowing your power is incomplete without enforcing it. Seneca, in his letters, emphasized the importance of saying no, not harshly, but decisively. He called it a form of self-respect. Throw aside all unnecessary desires and things that impede your freedom. Only then can you walk unshaken. Boundaries are not walls built from fear or pride. They are fortifications built from clarity, discipline, and self-value. They signal to the world, "This is my territory, my peace, and my mind. Enter only with respect." Imagine a modern scenario. A coworker repeatedly interrupts you in meetings, dismissing your ideas. A casual observer might shrug and say, "Just ignore them." The Stoic, however, does something different. They respond not with fury, but with a calm assertion of limits. A measured word, a pause, a subtle signal of refusal to tolerate repeated disrespect. The boundary is clear, unassailable, and unemotional. The aggressor loses power not because you punished them, but because you refused to give them leverage. Epictetus taught that external events are outside your control, but your response is always under your command. Boundaries are the bridge between inner mastery and outer influence. When a disrespectful person oversteps, your calm reaction paired with firm limits communicates strength instantly. No shouting, no posturing, just clear lines. Like a cliff that stops the sea, you do not move. Your energy is preserved, your dignity intact. Modern psychology confirms that assertive boundaries reduce stress and increase perceived respect. People naturally respond to clarity. When you show that you will not tolerate disrespect, others instinctively adjust. Some with compliance, some with distance. Either way, your inner world remains untouched. The key is consistency. A single wavering line invites chaos. A clear, unbroken boundary
fosters security for yourself and signals to others that you value your time, mind, and presence. The Stoics also knew that boundaries are relational, not isolated. You cannot build a fortress without knowing who is welcome inside and who is not. Seneca warned, "Associate with those who improve you, not those who drain you." Part of boundary setting is recognizing when to disengage from toxic influence entirely. Sometimes the ultimate respect you demand is for yourself alone. When you refuse to tolerate what diminishes you, you wield the quiet authority of someone who is untouchable from the inside out. This is the fourth Stoic tactic: set unbreakable boundaries. It transforms your calm, logical detachment into a shield that the world cannot breach. Disrespect loses its sting because the person attempting it has already been limited by your clarity, your resolve, and your presence. And yet mastery is not complete. True power emerges when boundaries are paired with strategic action, not reaction, which leads us to the final tactic: turning respect into influence without compromising your inner peace.
The final Stoic tactic is the most subtle and most powerful: influence without aggression. Once you have mastered presence, controlled speech, emotional detachment, and boundaries, the world begins to notice. And the Stoic knows that real strength does not shout. It acts quietly, strategically, and with purpose. Seneca described this as strength under calm. He wrote, "No man was ever wise by chance." Influence is never accidental. It is the product of discipline, perception, and timing. When someone disrespects you, your response should not be revenge or submission. It should be calculated action, guided by reason and virtue that reshapes the interaction in your favor. Marcus Aurelius offers a timeless example. Facing mutiny and slander, he did not retaliate with force against every critic. He listened, observed, and used their own words and actions to redirect events. He did not impose his authority with anger. He guided outcomes with patience, insight, and moral clarity. Those who mocked him eventually bowed to his wisdom, not because they feared punishment, but because they recognized competence, justice, and self-mastery embodied. Epictetus emphasized the mindset behind this tactic. It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. By remaining calm and strategically responsive, you shape perception. The disrespectful often do not recognize it at first, but your composed actions slowly change the dynamic. You stop being a target and start being a standard, a measure of composure and wisdom others unconsciously follow. In modern terms, think of it as the principle of earned authority. You do not demand respect with loud words, posturing, or confrontation. Instead, your mastery of self, the calm presence, the measured speech, the emotional detachment, and the clear boundaries naturally draws respect. Disrespectful behavior becomes irrelevant, even counterproductive, because they realize you are not a player in their game. You have already transcended it. This tactic turns insult into insight. Every disrespectful action reveals patterns, motives, and weaknesses in others. You respond with strategy, not impulse. You leverage their behavior to reinforce your influence, maintaining dignity without ever violating your principles. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." Action replaces argument. Calm replaces chaos. Influence replaces aggression. When applied consistently, these 5 Stoic tactics, silent presence, controlled speech, emotional detachment, and unbreakable boundaries, form a complete Stoic arsenal.
They allow you to navigate every insult, slight, and challenge with dignity, authority, and inner peace. The world may still test you, but you are no longer its prisoner. You are the master of your mind, your emotions, and ultimately, your respect. And yet, even mastery is a journey. The Stoics remind us that every insult is a teacher, every challenge an opportunity to refine virtue. By living these tactics daily, you transform disrespect from a wound into fuel, from a threat into a tool, from chaos into clarity. That is the Stoic way, the path of serenity, power, and unshakable honor.
Step back for a moment and imagine the Stoic in action. Silent presence, measured speech, emotional detachment, unbreakable boundaries, and strategic influence. Not as disconnected tactics, but as a flowing whole. Each one supports the other, forming a shield and a guide through a world that often seeks to belittle, provoke, or control. Marcus Aurelius faced betrayal, ridicule, and conspiracies daily. Yet he moved through life with a calm authority that seemed almost supernatural. He didn't need to yell, argue, or demand respect. His quiet presence set the tone. His words carried weight. His mind remained untouchable. His boundaries were clear. His actions turned conflict into opportunity. To the disrespectful, he was untouchable. To the wise, he was magnetic. This was the Stoic mastery of respect in its purest form. Seneca called it the cultivation of the inner citadel, a mind and soul fortified against insult, manipulation, and chaos. He advised, "True happiness is to live without regard to the opinions of others." But notice, it's not detachment for its own sake. It is the careful alignment of mind, speech, and action so that you're whole, unshaken, and sovereign. Disrespect no longer threatens you because you no longer measure yourself by the world's approval. Your power comes from within. Epictetus emphasized that respect is earned through virtue and action, not demanded through force or intimidation. He taught, "Don't demand that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and your life will flow well." By embracing this mindset, you turn the unpredictable behavior of others, their insults, slights, or manipulations, into a predictable, navigable landscape. You respond with logic, not ego, with calm, not reaction, with strategy, not chaos. Modern life offers endless opportunities to be disrespected, online, at work, in relationships, in public spaces. The Stoic tactics are timeless because they are internal, portable, and impervious to circumstance. Silent presence disarms aggression. Controlled speech ensures your voice lands with authority. Emotional detachment neutralizes insult. Boundaries safeguard your energy. Strategic influence transforms conflict into opportunity. Used together, they make you untouchable, not through fear, but through mastery of yourself. And yet mastery is not a final destination. Each moment of disrespect is a test, a teacher, a reminder to refine your discipline. The Stoic path is not about being unflappable for show. It is about cultivating a mind and life so aligned with virtue, reason, and clarity that disrespect cannot pierce you. This alignment is your fortress, your sword, your quiet authority. And when you achieve it, the world bends not because you dominate, but because you embody wisdom. As we prepare for the final truth, remember this. These tactics are not tricks, tools, or manipulations. They are the living expression of self-mastery. They transform the ordinary human experience of insult into a sacred practice of growth, clarity, and power. And what comes next, the final paragraph, will tie all of this together into one profound Stoic reflection, leaving you with clarity, empowerment, and silence worthy of contemplation.
Take a deep breath and picture yourself standing unshaken in the center of the storm. The insults come, the mockery, the lies, the disrespect. They swirl around you like wind and rain. But you are calm. You are present. You have mastered the silence that commands attention, the words that cut precisely, the detachment that renders chaos impotent, the boundaries that protect your inner citadel, and the subtle influence that reshapes the world without force. Marcus Aurelius, in his quiet moments, wrote, "Choose not to be harmed, and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed, and you haven't been." This is not a simple lesson in endurance. It is the essence of freedom. The freedom to act without fear, to respond without ego, to command respect without shouting, and to live according to virtue rather than the fleeting approval of others. Every insult that lands is now an echo, a reflection of someone else's turmoil, not a fracture in your soul. Seneca reminds us that life itself is fleeting and unpredictable. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor. In the context of respect, this means that those who seek to diminish you feed on your reaction. Refuse them that currency. Refuse them the satisfaction of control. By mastering yourself, you render their attempts impotent. Their disrespect becomes irrelevant, their opinions powerless, and their influence nullified. Epictetus taught that the mind is the one true possession that cannot be taken. No one is able to harm you unless you permit it. You now see how each of the 5 tactics flows from this truth. Silent presence disarms the aggression before it lands. Controlled speech communicates authority without ego. Emotional detachment shields you from unnecessary pain. Boundaries preserve your peace. Strategic influence converts conflict into opportunity. Taken together, they form a living philosophy, a complete armor against a world that seeks to provoke and diminish. But the Stoic path is not about invulnerability for show. It is about inner alignment, living in harmony with reason, virtue, and reality. Every insult is a teacher, every challenge a mirror, every disrespect an invitation to practice mastery. The Stoic does not resent the world. The Stoic does not beg for honor. The Stoic becomes honor. And in that becoming, the world bends, not because it must, but because it recognizes something rare, something enduring, a life lived with clarity, dignity, and power. So when you leave this reflection, remember, mastery is a practice, not a destination. Each day offers opportunities to test yourself in silence, in speech, in detachment, in limits, in action. The world will still insult, provoke, and belittle, and you will meet it, calm, deliberate, and untouchable. Not through force, not through rage, not through reaction, but through the quiet authority of a disciplined soul. That is the Stoic's ultimate freedom. As Marcus Aurelius concluded, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Carry that retreat with you. Let it be your shield, your sword, your invisible fortress. Disrespect may exist outside, but it cannot reach you inside. You are sovereign. You are untouchable. And from this place, you will move through the world not as a victim, but as a master.